we'll get to you, Jonathan.
The question I have is probably for Dave. The bills that are being passed, one of them being the health care bill, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the student loan, the student loan papers that I've been filling out for my kids now go to the government. They're totally unrelated, and yet they're piggybacked in on these. And this is not original to this year or this decade. This has been going on for quite a while. So if you vote on a bill or vote against a bill because it's injected, something is injected into it that you completely oppose, how will we know it? How will we know what your thoughts are? Or,
Sure.
And secondly, it's happening right now with funding of the servicemen, and now the don't ask, don't tell is going in under. It just makes no sense.
The Defense Department bill, you're right. It makes no sense. The idea of the leadership and the Democratic leadership right now is to jam as much through as quickly as possible and hope they can hold it long enough that we can't reverse it. I mean, we know that's their strategy. Two things. The first question you ask before you sign any bill or sign on to a bill is, what did the framers intend? And the second question you ask is, what does the Constitution allow? And if every congressman would ask that, and how do we get there? We get 70, 80 freshmen up there that are hard right, conservatives, understand what the framers intended, that bought into the roadmap. And there's a pretty good group of us. There's about 100 of us in the queue to be part of the freshman 50, where we've said we are coming to Washington to reinstate the constitutional form of government as we know in our republic. Okay? And the answer to that is that if a 2,800-page bill shows up on my desk and I get to page 7 and there's something unconstitutional, I don't have to keep reading. They send it back. Or if they try to jam it through in the middle of the night, simply say, I haven't had a chance to read it. And until we know, my staff and I know what is in that bill and what is the implications of everything in that bill, the answer is no until we are sure that it's constitutional. And unless we get a group willing to stand up, and we can pull the Tom Lathams back to the right. He is a conservative, but he's been in D.C. a long time, and it's easy to compromise. They get the big desk. Like Tom, he's a good supporter. But you know, Steve King will tell you. Told me this just again a week ago, 2 weeks ago tonight in Washington, D.C. at the Strike with International Banquet. He was there as our keynote. He said, Dave, there's 30 people up here I can trust to do the right thing every time in the House. I need you. He needs 100 people like himself and Michelle Bachmann and Mike Pence to stand in the gap. And not just push these guys or stop them at the line in the sand, we'll push them back and crush them. When we fought Germany in World War I, we fought to the German border and we stopped. And then we had to fight World War II. When we defeated them in World War II and crushed them, only then was Europe free. And only when we pushed the left back all the way to the Constitution and crushed them, will our kids and grandkids have the opportunity. Jonathan, I know you don't need a microphone.
Two questions. The family is the foundation for a just and moral society, not government. Yet in this state, the single largest expenditure, not in the general fund, but all government funds, which includes federal funds, is in health and human services because of family dysfunction. So one, what are your strategies to actually rebuild the family and to recreate accountability with the family? The second question, property taxes in this state, as they're structured, make it impossible to really create long-term sustainable wealth amongst Iowa's population. What do you propose to do to reform Iowa's property tax structure so that it's equitable from the farm to the rural town to even the blighted and decaying urban area?
Sure.
Thank you, Jonathan. I'll take the first half. How do we save the family? Many of us in the room are old enough to remember moms being home in the 50s and the 60s with their kids, when the tax burden in our society was about 12 or 15% of our domestic or economic capacity as a nation. It's when we had a very much in control, although growing rapidly, even at that time, federal government, and we had a lot of prosperity. Moms could stay home with their kids. Fathers were involved. Well, now we have a high tax levels. We have a welfare system that is disincentive for fathers to hang around. We've literally destroyed the family through government interference, through the Department of Education. So I believe that that constitutional roadmap, getting the federal government back to its duties, shrinking its size and scope, and reducing the tax burden on America, will allow moms that want to stay home with their kids. It will then hold fathers accountable in the social contract to make sure that they provide for their families, and to not let those off the hook. As you and I both know, in the black communities, they've literally been destroyed by liberal policies, and it's to push those guys back. And when it comes to property tax, I'm going to defer to one of the experts.
I never claimed to be an expert on property tax, but also I want to touch real quick on the family. You know, the reason why our family is decaying is because the government is in the family too much. I mean, you guys think about I see a few people in here that can remember back. I mean, who took care of your grandparents? Was it the federal government with Social Security, or was it the family?
The family.
It was the family, you know, and that's why you've seen such a breakdown in the family, is because we ship mom and pa off, and we let the government take care of them instead of the family taking care of them, and then them putting their values into their grandchildren and stuff. We have gotten too dependent on federal and state government all around. So I believe we need to shrink government in that area. I believe that's why we're seeing the families decay. You know, it's not the government's, it's not Stacey Apple's responsibility to make sure my kids are following the Healthy Kids Act. It's not the school's responsibility to send home a note to make sure my kids are exercising. That's what they're doing in my district, is they send home a note because they don't have the funds to make sure they're getting the exercise at school, so they have a parent sign a contract with them. And they have the parents sign off on it. No, that's what's going on in our school districts down there. And it's not the government's responsibility to make sure my kids are eating enough, not enough calories or too many calories, and make sure they're exercising. That's insanity. You know, it's not. Listen, my wife's grandmother is a great lady, but she is she can take care of herself, but yet she depends on the federal government to buy her a pair of shoes. You know, but she has plenty of money in the savings account. I hope you're not recording that, because I love my wife's grandmother. But my wife's grandmother doesn't need help paying for her oxygen that she has at her house. She can pay for that herself. You know, it's time to get government out of our lives altogether. And I know there's going to be times where somebody's destitute, or there's someone that doesn't have family to take care of them. But to rebuild that, we have to start there. And I believe that with the family. With the property taxes, you know, I'm very open to talk to you about property taxes and some ideas that you may have. I believe that you know, we have to reform our property taxes. I do believe that there's too much burden on too few people. I don't have the answers to it, Jonathan. But I'm, hold on. I don't have the answers, but I believe it's something we have to get a group of people of like-minded that has the family in mind, have business in mind, and we need to look at that. You know, I'm not going to follow blindly with the Republican Party. You know, so many Republicans come up here and just say, we need to cut property taxes. Okay, how are we going to cut them? You know, the problem is we don't have people putting plans together and addressing this in a feasible manner. They're just talking in empty suits with no true passion. Well, unfortunately, property taxes, I believe, listen, I pay too much in property taxes. But that hasn't been my passion, so I haven't spent as much time on the property taxes. Do I want to cut property taxes? Of course I do. Do I want to figure out how to make it more fair? Of course I do. But unfortunately, that's not an area I have spent a lot of time in. But I'll tell you that too. You know, I'm just not going to give you an empty answer. And I'm open to that. But, you know, I believe we need to look at consolidating some resources too. It's like, you know, I've read your platform. I agree with some of it. I don't agree with all of it. You know, I believe maybe we could look at consolidating some resources. I don't believe in closing the small schools. Could we maybe consolidate some administrators? Yes, I believe I could support something like that. You know, right now in Iowa Code we have 99 engineers. Every county has to have an engineer. That's insanity. And we have counties that have hundreds of thousands of people in it, and we have counties that have a few thousand people in it. And why does every county have to have an engineer? You know, there's a lot of things we can look at, and I believe that's where we should start.